Sifu, so how much would you say that some of the other teachers that you've had have been an inspiration for you? Because it sounds like the first gym that you studied at was very Renaissance for its time.
Well, I started really with Robert Smith, and he was very, very good at training the basics. And I think that provided me with a very good, solid foundation that, you know, in any art, any practice, the foundation is everything. You know, we all do that. We all want to jump and get to the advanced stuff, right? But you really got to learn from the beginning. I now that I'm not traveling as much with pandemic, things changed, much more online, and you know, not all the schools survived. Starting to travel again now. It's more and more seminars are coming back, but it's not every other weekend like it was. I used to go to the airport so many times, people would recognize, you know, you're going too much when the people at the desk say, weren't you just here? Yeah. but didn't we just see you last weekend? Yeah.
The TSA guys are waving you through. Yeah, we know.
Unfortunately, not that well, but you know, the people at the United counter at least. But, I started practicing my bonsai again. I really enjoy that. So now that I'm not traveling as much, I can do that. And one of the things I'm watching is the guys who are really top level of that, watching how they wire. You know, you have to wire the branches to put them where you want. And so it probably sounds very arrogant of me to say this, but I feel like I've got a good artistic sense of what to do. But I have to know how to execute that. And watching those guys work, you know, like, okay. Because maybe because I'm used to watching martial arts too, to see how somebody did. That helps. And you've got to have the foundation stuff. You can't go you can't say, oh, I want to learn sword fighting. You just start fighting. Well, you have to deflect properly. Where's the position? What are the cuts? You don't want to wait forever either. First weekend seminar, kind of me, you'll be doing sword play, you know. It'd probably be bad sword play, but so what? You're going to do sword play. So Robert Smith was great that way. We would stand in bow postures, sometimes the whole class. You almost were standing in a puddle of your own sweat toward the end there, you know. So we would stand, you know, I don't know how long it was, several minutes, and then you'd move to the next and hold that, and then move the next, hold that. So body mechanic wise was very good, structure wise. And, he really, really stuck to the principles. You know, the waist is absolute commander. There's no funny stuff, you know, those kinds of things. And also because of Robert Smith, I knew who people were. So I went to, I knew who Taiji Liang was, for example, and knew that this was the guy, because early on I started realizing there was a lot more to Taiji Chuan than I had known when I came in. And sword work, for example, swords and weapons are important in the system because there are strength training.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Especially like spears. When I was going to a tournament, I just worked a spear like a demon, you know, because you had to have especially international level, you really had to have a lot of power. Other things are important, but you had to check that power box. If you were good at everything else and you had medium power, you weren't getting past the first round. You had to have power to knock somebody on their ass with a palm strike. If you didn't, forget it. And spear, you just do spear, more spear. So your arms are just like noodles. You can't lift it anymore. So weapons training was important for that. And so I got started, and I've been interested in swords earlier in life, and I sort of got back to it. And so I went to Taiji Liang for that. And I was only with him very briefly, but sometimes, I mean, when somebody is at that kind of really special level, sometimes something just clicks, you know. Like I honestly couldn't fudging. Everybody's trying to figure out how to do that. It's just like, you know, you try and it's not working. And Taiji Liang had an old jian, a Qing period one. And he'd like to do this to people. He would like to make fun of people. He would joke people. And he took his jian and he did this, movement, bung or tiao, where you sink and you spring, the blade flicks up. You can use it as a cut underneath, or you can use it as a beating movement to deflect. And the blade, if you do it well, the blade will quiver. And, cause it's a springy blade. And he'd do that and he'd go, boom, and he was, at that time, he must have been 80s, and it would vibrate like, big vibration. And then he'd give it to people and he'd go, here, you try. And they, of course, they try really hard, like with their arm, with the arm, and it would go zip, and it would pop up and it would be dead still. Yep. And TT would go, oh, look, all muscles, no strength. He'd make fun of me. So he did that. And I kind of expected he was going to do that, visiting him at his home. And he did that. And I didn't get it. I couldn't do it. Mine also was dead still. It wasn't vibrating. And he laughed and he joked, kidded me, And I said, do it again. I handed it back. I said, do it again. And he did it again. I said, let me see. And cause just watching him, something clicked and boom, and then I could do it. So I think that, boom, that instantaneous, there's something, somehow I saw that spine worked, how the spine connected to the legs, and boom. And then I could do it. I couldn't do it very well, but I could do it. And once you sort of cracked that, okay, if I can do it there, then how do I do it? That's sinking. How do I do that thrusting? How do I do that? And then slowly, okay, it's like cracking the code. At first, you can only read a little bit of the secret message, but now, now bit by bit, more and more and more falls into place. So that was, I was very lucky that way, that there was somebody else there with me at the same time who didn't get it. So, I have to have those foundation building blocks, that foundation training, or you're not going to. And then, just something has to happen. It clicks. And then I also went to study with William Chen up in New York. I used to go up once a month. There were really great guys there too, Dave Pankarician and Tom Otterness and Rick Barrett. Those guys were back then. Push hands tournaments, those guys were all really, really people to contend with. So I'd go up and work with them. And of course, William Chen was probably the most generous teacher that I've ever met. He always pushed hands with everybody, every class. And Sancho, he went with everybody. So that was really great. And his push hands, he was so fast. Like his hand could come out, touch you so lightly, like you barely felt it. And then his lightning bolt would go through it that would either spin you around or knock you on your ass. But I had to earn that. I had to, he didn't do that. He didn't blast everybody like that. You had to earn it with him, but he pushed hands with everybody. I think he just had his 90th birthday, Master Chen.
Wow.
He was always very nice guy, really easygoing. It was kind of a lark driving through New York City with him because he drove really slow through Manhattan. It's going like 10 miles an hour, and everybody else, and he never looked. He didn't look where he was going. He'd be looking at you sideways, talking as he was turning to the left, and I was sitting next to him, and he was in the right. And he just, because he went so slow, it didn't matter. People were just went around him, and I don't know how it was like this. It was because I was used to driving. Being from Jersey, I would go in the city all the time, and you just drive. It's great. You could drive like a demon through the city, and he was the exact opposite. He was so relaxed. He was really fangsong, this guy. And I can tell you one funny story. One night, I was training at his school and I wanted to do an article on Sancho. So after class, we went out to a local coffee shop there and a little diner place. And, I interviewed him, and they were walking back. My car was parked in front of his school. And as we came up to the school, and I guess I was probably about five-year practitioner then. So still relatively young and really lots to learn. And on the corner there was a topless bar there. And this guy comes out staggering. He's clearly very, very drunk. And he almost runs into me, and he tries to pick a fight with me. And I'm thinking, and I didn't handle it well. I was saying like, oh man, I got to punch this guy out in front of the teacher, cause he was sort of, my back was to my car and he was there. I should have just slipped away, but I let myself get stuck there. And I'm just thinking like, I don't want to, he's drunk, what's the point of punch out a drunk guy? And Master Chen he slipped in between us and he pushed the guy very gently, just not knock him over, but just keep him off balance. And the guy said, he's like, oh, no, you want to fight? You fight me. You come back tomorrow. Here, my school is here. Come back tomorrow. We'll fight. And he very gently pushed the guy, like it was pushing. The guy actually yielded pretty well, come to think of it, because he was so drunk. You know? He could have just given this guy the littlest push, right? He would have fallen over. And Master Chen just pushed him just right. And then the guy kind of stepped back and said, "What do you know, karate or something?" And he did some silly pose. And Master Chen just kept saying, "No, tomorrow, come back tomorrow. We have classes. Go ahead." And the guy then staggered off. And I thought, man, that was really good Taiji Chen, you know, because talk about sticking and following, right? See, my response was wrong. Like, do nothing or hit the guy, you know?
Right.
And I didn't want to hit him because, like, you know, couldn't defend himself. There's no reason to hit him, but, you know, I was kind of, what should I do? And Master Chen just, see, it was exactly the right level of stuff. He didn't knock him down, right? He didn't push him away. He didn't let him get close or do anything that, you know, where he might do something stupid and take a swing at you. And then the guy just, but also invited him to take class.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That was great.
That's a great story.
He is a great guy, Master Chen. So I think the thing that was lucky for me is that because I knew Robert Smith and Robert Smith knew those guys, it sort of one door opened the next door for me, you know? So like when I went to visit Titi Liang knew Wang, and I'd already been studying with Wang Yinyin, and he knew Wang Yinyin, back, of course, from Taiwan days, and he actually also had studied actually with Wang Yinyin. Titi Liang did. So he knew who I was before I got there. You know, not that I was somebody. I'm not trying to say I was somebody, but he knew, oh, that guy's a student of Wang Yinyin, who was somebody he knew and respected. And so, and oh, he also had studied with William Chen. Okay. So one guy knew the other guy, and then that helps sort of, you know, it's like your Taiji uncles, you know.
That's great.
And it sort of helped to open up doors and smooth things out for me. So I consider myself to be really very, very fortunate this way. So
go ahead, O. If you've got one, I've got one. Okay. So we were talking about seminars, Sifu. Could you tell us about your last big one? You had something special that you just
we just had a couple this winter. I did two, one here and one in England for instructors training, and those were all constant swordplay. So it wasn't so much no instruction really, you know, this technique or that technique. Just go play. Full contact sword with, you know, full weight weapons. This is what you're doing wrong. This is what you're doing wrong. Try this, step here, you know, whatever. One we had in England was actually rather in Scotland was really nice because we rented a castle for that. So that was really cool. Castles are a great place to have things because everybody has a room. You have a big kitchen to make food and a big table for everybody to sit at. And you also have a great hall, which becomes your training hall. So if you have a lot of people, that actually works out quite well. Unfortunately, we don't have any castles here in the U.S. that we can get, but there's quite a few in Europe. I found a good one and a well-placed one for us. And that was great. One of my students who, was some of the guys, most people are like, yeah, castle. Right. I mean, who's not going to go train in the castle? You know,
that's right.
This castle had been totally rebuilt. So it had central heat, you know, it had proper bathrooms, plenty of them too. So nobody had trouble like, you know, waiting for the bathroom or whatever. It was all plenty of baths and showers for everybody afterwards. So it was completely rebuilt, really nice. And, we got there when we drove up from the south. I first taught some seminars down in, Essex, which is, east of London, down on the south coast. So we drove all the way up to Edinburgh and then over to the castle. And the guy who drove me up was one of the guys who was like, I don't know, I was sure this is going to be good. And we got there. He's like, oh, this is great. We got inside and looked around. He's like, oh, this is, I said, all right, I'm eating crow. You're right. This is really good. And so that was fun. I mean, you know, it makes it a little bit, you know, more fun than having it in a hotel or whatever. And it's nice, you know, when we had, 8, how many do we have there? We had a dozen students. So you know, when you have that many people, it's nice for everybody to get together because people came from, you know, UK, Scotland, Poland, Estonia, Singapore. That's awesome. You know, so we had people from all over. The one guy came from the US. One of the better guys came over there from the US to train. So, you know, we all get together, see each other at seminars, but we don't, all sort of living together, So it was nice for those few days that we could all be together and hang out and, after a day's training, have a beer by the fire and, all that kind of thing was quite nice. The camaraderie of your martial brothers, So that was good. And I'm doing that because I think one thing that teachers often don't do that they should do, at least in my opinion, is prepare for the time that they're not going to be teaching. I'm not going to teach forever. I've told my students, there's going to be a time when you can call me up and I'll be like, nope. No, I'm in the garden. I'm having to do my own thing, at some point I'm not going to teach till I imagine I will keep doing something until I drop dead, but I'm not going to keep traveling around. And travel is, it's great to go places. I've been, Poland, Estonia, Germany, France, England, Scotland, Australia, around the US, Canada, all those places are great. And, did I say Netherlands?
Oh, wow.
And meeting all those people and finding the people who are really serious, who really want to get the art. That's fantastic. And spending time with them, getting to know them, it's great. But going there, being on planes it's no fun. Yeah. I know more about planes and airports than anybody who's not a pilot should know. So there's come a time where like enough's enough. I'm not going to keep doing it forever. So I want to, share the art, pass it on. And I think anybody who loves any art really loves it, wants to share it, So I have apprentice students and I'm going to do everything I can to pass on everything I got to them, and then they'll take over, and if I can generate more than just me, that's, I'm not the only one. And, when my Estonian student, Roland Tepp, is one of the guys, he'll probably be teaching in Europe, the northern part of Europe he'll have. And then, I have Di Andrews here in the States. I'm sure he'll take over some of the stuff in the States. And there's guys in the UK. There's Paul Andrews is a Shingi Academy. You may know him.
Yeah.
He's in the UK. So we have enough guys here and there that each one will sort of have their territory. Of course, it's going to be up to them. They're going to have to prove themselves. They're going to have to build it. They're going to have to work with their students. But, you have to prepare people for this. You just can't one day go, next year, that's it. That's my last seminar.
Right.
And then there's a scramble. Oh my God, what are we going to do and how to? So prepare people now, make sure they know all of the exercises, there's a knowledge base that you want to make sure, okay, they got that. Then they have to have trained it and then they got to be able to do it. So, every day at those teacher retreats, it's just going at it again. Lunch. All right. Got your sword. Let's go. Go again. And then coaching them through, I don't think that's any different than we did in the past too. I don't think that's anything unique. I think it's just what we should be doing, right? So we're going to. So we are.
Is there anything, Sifu, in your current teaching, your model of teaching that might differ from your teacher? Besides the online, of course.
That's of course very. There was no online.
Of course.
Yeah, I think perhaps, it depends on, time and place and situations change. Wang Laoshi, he was in the military. As I was saying earlier, he was a very high officer in a warlord army, in Yan Xishan's army. And so he was in the South and retreated with the nationalist troops to Taiwan. And his teacher, his warlord, Yan Xishan, tried to overthrow Chiang Kai-shek and didn't succeed.
Wow.
So and not a good position to be in.
Wow.
So Wang Laoshi, who was then a colonel, they nationalized all those different troops, warlord armies and national army into one. He was a colonel. He realized there's no more career for him in the military, right? Because his Yan Xishan was put under house arrest for the rest of his life. So, his military career was over and he was, I don't think he didn't know what he was going to do. and he was just in the park practicing. And of course, in those days, I guess this would have been about 1950, I guess. I don't know the exact year. Nobody knew what Taiji Chuan was. In Taiwan, no one had heard of Taiji Chuan. You know, it's funny. Everybody in the world's heard of Taiji Chuan now, but in Taiwan, they literally had no idea what the heck Taiji was. So he was in the park practicing one day, and a guy came over and looked at him and said, what is this? What are you doing? He said, it was Taiji Chuan. And the guy said, is it any good? And he said, can you fight with it? And he said, yeah, you know. And the guy said, well, can I try you? And he said, well, what are you going to try? What do you want to try? And the guy said, how about I try to push you? Which of course is, for a Taiji guy, that sounds hilarious. You're going to try to push me? Sure. And he tried to push him. And of course that didn't do well. He tried to push him and he lost his balance. And then they're trying, Master Wang bounced him back. And he's like, this is pretty good. Do you teach? And Wang Lashe said, well, he hadn't been teaching. He'd never taught before. He'd been a hand-to-hand combat instructor in the military, but he hadn't really taught Taiji Chuan the way like we think of it nowadays. And he said, well, if you get 10 people together, I'll do it. And the guy did. And that's how he started teaching Taiji Chuan. So it wasn't like he thought, all right, well, I'm going to start a school now. He just, it came that way. And, I think at that time, so he was teaching, so more and more people sort of slowly came, and he had a rather large school. When I found him, and because he visited Robert Smith, and I went to Taiwan to study with him, he had, I don't know, probably a couple of hundred students, just lots of students.
Wow.
A great deal of students. So probably the way things evolved at that time, it just grew into that. And so I think that perhaps, I never asked him this, and he didn't say to my knowledge, but I think he might have been thinking like, okay, now that I'm doing this, I should really preserve the art and teach a lot of people. And he did. And so there's a lot of people practicing this particular system, this Yang Style Taijiquan system. There's more in Europe than here in the U.S. So I think that it sort of, solidified the art or preserved the art in that sense. But so I think Wang Lashe kind of taught the masses, so to speak. And I'm not interested in that. I want to teach people who are going to try to do their best to go deeply into the art, make something special for themselves, and then have a high level of skill so they can pass the art on again in the future. So, because I said, I won't be here forever. And I'm not worried about it. You know, I've known people who give up their life to the art. I think that's a big mistake. I think I could have made that mistake, but early on when I was living kind of like a hermit by myself in an apartment with no furniture, or just teaching and training all the time, you know, I think a lot of us go through that call it a monk phase, kind of, you know, just training all the time, 6 hours every morning kind of thing, you know. I read a book where the guy said, don't dedicate your life to the art, dedicate the art to your life.
I love that.
That's good. Because I think I could have slipped down that slope because I was very, you know, gung ho and, you know, 100%er, you know, whatever you call it. And, that's a big mistake. And I've seen teachers who've done that, and later in life, they've got nothing. Their family life is usually not good. Their health is bad because sometimes they overtrained themselves. They didn't know when to take a break, and take care of their health as well as their desire to enjoy the art. They don't have they don't have anything else aside the art. You know, I really like to do other things. You know, I said, recently, now they're not traveling, really enjoying the bonsai. You know, it's wonderful art. And I try to encourage anybody who's a martial artist to also practice some other, I don't know what to call it, decorative art, or, you know, not a non-martial art.
I love that. You mentioned that on Ken's podcast. Like, go play a guitar, go learn to cook.
Yeah, whatever
something.
it is, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's good or other people like it, or just do it. And you find that it's interesting because we all talk about, or many of us at least talk about, this is a martial way, right? This is a way of life. Well, if your only application is hitting other people, then that's not a way of life. That's just beating up on people.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to use what I understand. When I can sense what somebody's doing in swordplay, I can move with them and flow with it to the sticking and falling, whatever you like to how you refer to it, and move and countercut and do my, flow with it, Can I do that when I'm looking at a tree? I don't want to just make it so a bonsai is not a tree in a pot that I've bent to make it look like I want. It should be the condensation of nature. It's originally a Taoist art and practice. So it's like the essence of nature. So you have to be quiet. In my mind, I mean, other people may disagree with me, and I'm no great master of bonsai art. But when I want to sit there for a moment and my mind is clear and quiet, suddenly, just like you're facing somebody's sword and they come at you, when you really have a bout with somebody who's good, you ask me afterwards what happened, I can't tell you because I'm not in that same kind of mind. I can think about it later and I can sort of reconstruct the feeling, but there's no thinking kind of mind. And I want to use that mind when I'm drawing, when I'm painting, when I'm working on the trees. I don't want to force my will on it. I want to find what's there. And I believe I'm doing it in this old way, you could say. I'm not making a sculpture. So at least I hope no. Well, I should confess, sometimes I probably am. But, and I think this way, if we take this martial art and we work hard to achieve something special in the martial art, then it comes a useful martial way that we can do in any kind of, how you drive your car, how you talk to people, So
that's awesome.
Not just hitting. If all you're going to do is hit somebody, maybe that's not like William Chen that night. He could hit that guy and the guy would wake up tomorrow. I mean, he's fast and powerful. He could have just knocked that guy, knocked him right out. But why? Is that all you got? You got 2 settings, off and death ray.
Right.
It's got to be a lot of other things in between. So yes, I hope people listen this long. It's a long discussion, but if people do, I hope that they will think about that and just try something, I'm actually, I'm sorry I'm going on about this, but
please do.
Yeah. It's hard to find the right pot. And so I got some local guys I'm getting to know. I want to make my own pots. Because then I get the pot I need. Sometimes it's amazing. There's thousands of pots online, but I want this because it's what looks right for that tree, the right size. I want to go make my own pots. So
that's awesome.
I love it.
I love it.
Crappy,
I love it.
So what? You make another one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I bet you the first one will look like an amoeba.
Part of the learning process.
Yeah, right?
Starting all over.
And enjoy that process, right? Nothing wrong with, people are so afraid to get a bruise today, but also like to show that, look, I always say, look at my nose. You can tell I did Sancho, right? I got banged up. I'm lucky that I didn't get really badly hurt, really lucky, I know lots of guys who, I'm sure you know them too, who said, yeah, I wish I did 20, 30% less because they got injuries when they're older. Those injuries come back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really lucky that I didn't get any really severe injuries, but don't try to keep face in front of everybody. Just do it.
Yeah. I think along those same lines, I was going to ask you about your archery practice and how did you sort of come about, getting into archery?
Well, when I was younger, when I was a little boy and up through high school, I shot quite a lot.
Okay.
And I was interested in different types of archery, just kind of curious. And so, and I was a hunter, I hunted deer. And, I really quite liked hunting that way. When you become a Taoist, you're not supposed to kill anymore. So I gave up hunting. And I can understand why, because not just the words, like Wang Lao Shu would have said, changes your heart, but I hadn't hunted in many years. And when I first went over to Soviet Union, some of my students there, they couldn't pay me anything, but, they had nothing, but, they could do things, what would you like to go, whatever. And they said, well, we could take you hunting. Could have gone bear hunting or something. And there was a part of me that was like, ooh, that would be, but it's interesting how you start thinking about it. You can feel, inside it's different. But when you're going out to kill, it's not like, you just defended yourself. You're stalking and you're going to kill. So it's different. But in the forest, when you're by yourself, you go out when it's pitch black, you creep into the forest and wait for the sun to come up, and then you stalk game. You have to be very quiet. You have to you have to listen. You have to walk without making sound, or it's hard to walk without making any sound, but you have to walk and make it sound like you're a deer walking. That's being in the forest in a very different way. I don't think rifle hunters are that way. I could be wrong, but I didn't hunt with a rifle. But with a bow, you have to be very close to nature, I think, to hunt successfully. You can tramp through the forest with your bow and get nothing. But if you're going to even see a deer and get close enough to shoot, you're talking about 10 meters. Mm-hmm. You have to get really close. And the deer know you're out. They know it's hunting season. They're watching. They're scared. So they're really hyped. So I'd done fairly serious archery. Now archery is different. Hunting archery, you have to shoot from all different positions and practice twisting your body and leaning this way because you never know the situation you're going to be in. It's not like target archery where you know where you're going to stand and where the target is. So I'd always done that. But then, going to college and living in the city, I didn't shoot for many years. But just in the I think those of us if you go really deep into martial arts, there's a feeling like you want to be completely well-rounded as a martial artist. And when we think of martial arts today, we'll think of striking or grappling or something like that. But in the past, just like soldiers today, I mean, if you're a soldier, they may give you a knife. But if you're fighting with your knife, man, you're in trouble.
That's
what have you done
right.
wrong, right?
Yep.
You should be using your rifle, or even better, how about we call in an airstrike and you hit them when they're 10 miles away? You want to hit people out at range. And so pre-modern times in Qing dynasty, that would have been bow and matchlock. So, they did quite a lot of guns. People tend to think bow was a big thing for them. And you could say that the bow for the Manchu bannermen was like, the katana would be for a samurai. That's why you see they wore a thumb ring. Mm-hmm. If you see Manchu bannermen, that was sort of a sign that you were a bannerman. You're a Manchu Qiyuan. You had that thumb ring, right? Samurai would have carried their two swords, right? But it's not so easy to walk around with a bow and arrows all the time. They're kind of big, to walk around. So they always wore that as a symbol of they're the member of the warrior class. So bow was a very important part of the martial way, you could say. And so I was interested in sort of, expanding that. And again, using proper body mechanics. And then when I started researching it, unfortunately I had one of my good students here is a native speaker, helped a great deal because it's hard to reading classical Chinese is not easy. And I can't freely read it. My Chinese is okay. I don't want to pretend that I'm fluent. I have a functional level of Chinese. I can speak and travel around and get something to eat, find out where the bathroom is, all
the important stuff.
Where to go, hello, how are you? And the basic stuff is okay. And it's curious. I could always understand Master Wong talking about martial arts. I have a very specialized vocabulary, but I can't understand the news because I don't know the words for Secretary of State or, we're building a new highway. I would only catch some of the words. But if Master Wong could talk all day about sword, I'd think, man, my Chinese is getting good. And then we'd go someplace else and I would understand half of what was being said. So, that's the way it is. But, so we looked at those classics. And if you look at the body mechanics, first of all, these old writings, old archery manuals say that this is just like boxing. This is just like Chen. So they look at that as being the same kind of thing. And so there's body mechanics, the way you open your body. And, in Taiji Chen, we say, for example, it's Han Xiong Bao Bei, haul the chest and lift the back. They say Han Xiong Chu Bi. Han Xiong, Chu Bi means, crook the elbow. Bi means the arm or limb. limb. So, not arm, means limb, to be. So there's very similar, well, I would say the same body mechanics stuff. So it's just sort of a natural extension. And I would say that archery is kind of like a one movement form. So archery is kind of, like on a day off where I need a day off from practice. I can't have a heavy practice today, but you want to do something. Archery is great, because you have to you inhale, you draw, and exhale and release. That's it. One movement form. And you do 6 one movement forms, and you walk to the target. So it's a nice practice. You have to focus your mind intent, focus your body, but it's, not like, say, doing, an hour and a half of form or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it is of course, it is also physically demanding, and it's different. Of course, you're drawing instead of pushing. Most time we're striking, pushing forward, right?
Yes.
But with a bow, you're pulling. So it's a nice balance for that as well. So, but I don't get to do it nearly as much, with the pandemic as I would like. The pandemic changed, life for everybody. I was about to have the first instructors training that we have through the Academy of Chinese Swordsmanship over in England, had rented the castle, and then canceled everything because it wasn't going anywhere. And just talking with a student there who did IT work, and I said, what about this webinar thing? I never tried it before, but what do you think? And we said, well, let's try it. It's worked very well. Honestly, it worked better than I thought it would. I'm seeing a big difference when people come to in-person seminars. They're ready as opposed to not having anything. Just knowing the basic cuts, knowing combinations of cuts, knowing footwork, knowing the names. So when you talk about it, they're not trying to remember all these odd, Mandarin terms. That's been really, I think that combination, because if people spread out, online, I have somebody in Texas and in France and in Estonia and in Canada and God knows, in Mexico even, and some people in the Middle East, in the Islamic world, all online at the same time. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be able to see those guys at seminars at the same time. Yeah. But then when there are seminars, people from whatever region close to that region will go. So when I'm in Europe, they go, and some Americans will sometimes go back and forth, Europeans. So that's worked really well. But we, for nearly 2 years, worked 7 days a week on it. So I tell anybody, if you're thinking about an online program, better be ready to really work hard on it.
I was just going to say that's heavy lifting right there.
Yeah,
that's
there's
crazy.
Always something. I mean, if you want to, basically, I don't think of what I do as a business, but it's basically like starting a new business from scratch. I mean, if you opened up a business tomorrow, you better plan on working 12 hours a day for 7 days a week, or your business is going to fail. There's always something, and happily we have a full-time IT guy.
Wow.
To be able to hire and pay a full-time IT guy, we had to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We had to bring in, have to have a certain number of students. So because of that, unfortunately, I've not been able to shoot like I'd like to, because just boom, 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 boom. But it's coming back, has to come back. I'll have to rebuild my calluses and start with a light bow again, but that's okay.
Good. Cool. Owen, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
I have a few.
Okay.
Not too many. I know it's long, but
that's all right. I don't know if anybody's going to listen this long, but
what we do, Sifu, is we actually break it into 2 sections.
Two pieces.
So we'll have a section
this one may need to be 3.
That sounds good. Good.
That's all good.
Is there something unique in the Tai Chi that you received from your teacher that you do not see in other Yang styles? Maybe it's a 2-man set. Maybe it's a power training method. Maybe it's a way to look at push hands or Sansho. Is there something you're like, I've never seen that anywhere else in the Yang?
I'd say that the one thing was presented as a complete system. So I think that the other styles of Taiji Chuan would have had everything that we've got, but it's become very fractionated, so this all existed within, not just in the Yang style of Taiji Chuan, but I think in all the different Chinese martial arts, all different styles, they had all that stuff, but it's just gotten, it's fallen by the wayside. I mean, very few people do spear training anymore. And it's the most difficult, physically the most difficult, but it's great training. I mean, it is the top of the power training. So just that you have that component available. So to have a complete set of push hands basic exercises that work all your skills systematically, that you have then, the weapons training and all of that. And each thing builds on the next, but they also, it's a web. They all interact with each other. And, doing the spear, you learn how to fudging well and how to push, and then you put that into your push hands. And then when you're doing your form, your form changes a little bit because you realize, okay, I should have had my elbows here instead of sticking up there. And so they're all constantly feeding back into each other. Mm. But structurally, as far as the form is concerned, this Michuan system has absorbed things from a variety of martial arts. So when Yang Luchan was in Beijing, they chetso. Chetso means that you have a bout. It's okay. It's a good bout. We're gonna go, but I'm not trying to kill you. You're not trying to kill me. And if you have a good bout with somebody, you maybe later on you're having tea, you might say,
how'd you do that?
Right. You caught me with that. What was that thing you did? That technique. I mean, what did you do? That was a good one. And if you're friends, sometimes you're not going to give away your stuff. But, if there's a mutual respect, there could be some exchange. And so in the Michuan system, you see a lot of good stepping that you don't generally see. Most Taiji training, the feet are fixed for the empty hand form. And it starts seeing the movement, and more stepping in the weapon systems. But in the Michuan system, for example, we absorb the half stepping from Xingyi Chuan. So you see that half stepping is right in there from the beginning. And there's also snake stepping and other, also the plum blossom stepping that you see in the Da Hong trend and Xiao Hong trend. Mm. Most people understand that Yang Luchan learned type of Northern Shaolin before he studied Taiji Chuan and then created his own system. So that stepping patterns that you see in this plum blossom stepping, you see in those styles that Da Hong trend and Xiao Hong trend that Yang Luchan practiced are also in the Michuan system. So this was the one that he kept to himself and only in his family, so, it has it has the secret sauce in it, has that stepping kind of work. That's very, very useful. It's one thing you see. I mean, even if you see professional fighters, if one guy's stepping is better than the other, even just a little bit better, it makes quite a difference, right? That's often a hole, I think, in people's training. I like to drill a lot of footwork because it's often the thing that's lacking. So I think that's structurally one thing that's really quite different. It's also works off the back leg more instead of the bow posture. So that is physically different. I found it very interesting because I had come up through Chen Manjing's lineage. And that was, what I would call the public Yang style. That's the things that were taught publicly. And that's bow posture based. Most Taiji Chuan is based on bow posture. And the Michuan system is kind of, you might say, like a reverse bow posture. Instead of being 70-30 front loaded, you're 80-20 back loaded. Mm. And so what that did for me was I realized, you get dogmatic. You think pung is this, this is what a ward off is, and a push is this. And it is, that's correct, but you're stuck in that format, right? You only think of a ward off being that physical structure. Well, okay, and it is, but you're dogmatic. Can you do pung any other way? And so now when I had to do pung from the back leg and, weight in the back, I said, wait. And that I found, I've often said it's like when you learn a new language. When you learn a second language, somehow it improves the way you speak English or whatever your first language is, in some odd fashion. I don't know how that works, but it does feel like you've improved your thinking. So you're more free. So I think that having learned, come up originally through Chen Manjing's lineage with Smith and Liang and Chen, and then part of the time also started into the Michuan system, that it really freed me of that dogma that I didn't realize I had. And these are both systems that originate from Yang Luchan. So it's not like I did. I think that's something we have to be careful about. Nowadays, people practice, they say, oh, what'd you do? Well, I learned 6 different martial arts. And they go, well, I did this for 2 years and I did that for 3 years and I did a year and a half with this guy. It's like, well, what you're telling me is that you've been a beginner 6 times. I mean, you may have enough stuff that you can play well, but you're 6 times a beginner. What if you had just done one art really deeply and really did that art, not just the stuff you learn in the first 2 years, but really did that art? So I don't suggest people say learn Taiji and I don't know, Korean, whatever, or, Japanese karate or something like that. They're using the body. They're developing the body in very different ways. But in this case, this is all within the Yang family's sphere, if you will. So I think that worked well for me. So I was just dumb luck. I didn't I wish I could say I was really smart and I planned all this and figured it out. I didn't. It was just, I was lucky. And it made sense.
Sometimes luck is a blessing.
Yeah, very much. So I really feel I've been extraordinarily fortunate, the teachers that I've met, and that they were also willing to give it to me, So, but I had to earn it. I had to earn it. We are going on a long time, but I think one thing that people misunderstand today is I definitely misunderstood with Wang Lao Shi was they would say, well, when the student's ready, the teacher will give it to him. That's nonsense. Now I got this stuff. I kept asking them. You got to go after it. You sit around. I mean, when teaching the spear, Master Wang didn't teach you the spear. I asked him, teaching me spears. Why do you want to learn spear for? It's inconvenient. It's so long. I was like, well, I really want to learn. It's like, So I would go to the school at night and before class, and I would do it. And then after class, I would ask him. And he one time picked up a pencil out of his thing and he just showed me. He didn't get up even like this. But I kept doing it. And then I proved it, like, okay.
Sure.
I kept doing it. And then
I want this. Yeah.
Then he said, okay, you're doing the work, I see you doing the work, because most people won't. The pole just sat there by the, against the wall. No one ever used it. And now I'm using it, and I kept using it, and is this right? Is this correct? And then he corrected me. And then okay, next year when you've showed you're really still doing it, then you get corrections, and then you really teach it to you. So
right.
I think that's how as I said earlier, my view of Master Wang is quite different, I think, than many of my classmates. So,
wow. Well, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So what are you up to? Real quick. This is the wrap up question. What are you up to? What's our next seminar? Are you working on a book right now?
Yeah. Do you have something you want to promote?
Book wise? Yeah. I've got stuff that I've always got too many, great projects to do. I've always got at least half a dozen, video projects that I want to do. Swords that I want to do them on and or talking about swordsmanship. I've got a collection of matchlocks from the Qing dynasty, and I've got a series planned for that, and some people help me do the translations. That's really tricky to translate that stuff. I probably couldn't have done it on my own. So I had that translated. I got that I want to do, and I want to fire some of them. Blank rounds. They're old. I'm not going to fire with a bullet, a ball would be a ball. So I got that I want to do. Book wise, I've got my book, Swordsman's Notebook, that's been sitting in this computer forever, that I just gotta, that was the thing. That's why it sounds terrible to say, but in some ways the pandemic's been good for me, because it's given me a chance to not be on planes and start doing some more of those other things. So I just gotta lay it out and just have, when you go away for 2 weeks and you come back, you can't say I'm taking a week off, because the student's been covering for you for 2 weeks,
right.
So that's going to do. The seminar's coming up, going to be back in England in May. And we're going to do more intensives, because I'm working with the people out in St. Paul quite a lot. So that's going to keep going, and training the next generation, so I could retire and let them do the work.
So can people reach you through your website?
Yes. So grtc.org. So G is George, R is River, T is Tom, C is Charlie.org, or the you look just to search for the Academy of Chinese Swordsmanship. That we sort of created that as a separate entity with its own portal. And that's Chinese SwordAcademy.com. Okay. But if you just look up that, right? I never go to my own website. I have to think of what the heck it is.
I hear you.
It's Academy of Chinese Sword, ChineseSwordAcademy.com. That's right.
Okay.
No, I never go to my own website to think of what it was.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. It's really
good.
I hope to see you guys at a seminar.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Sifu Scott, have a blessed day.
Take care. Stay strong.